Welcome to the March 10th meeting of the Franklin Board of Education. This meeting has been properly posted. Mr. Alexandrowicz is excused. Ms. Larson, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Gamble.
Present.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Sprague.
Here.
Mrs. Sapersky.
Here.
And I am also here.
Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Witkowski,
Second.
second by Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, community comment. Participants need to come forward to the mic, state your name and address. Statements are limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 15 minutes for any and all comments. If the community comment is related to an agenda item, the board may respond to that comment either at the end of community comment session or during the discussion of that agenda item. The board may not discuss a comment or question that does not relate to an agenda item per board policy, Administrative Rules 8300. Would anyone like to have a community comment? Anyone for community comments? Seeing no one, I will close community comments. Item 5, are there any school board announcements from the members? No announcements. And item 6, school board, item 5 rather. No. Yeah, that was right. School board calendar. Be a regular Board of Education meeting on Wednesday, March 24th, here at the ECC at 6 p.m. Another meeting, Board of Education, here on April 14th at 6 p.m. And in item 7, administrator update. Dr. Miller.
Good evening. I have 3 pieces of good news to share this evening. It's my pleasure to share that Erin King, principal at Forest Park Middle School, has been selected as the 2021 Herb Cole Educational Foundation Principal Leader. Ms. King was chosen for this honor as a result of setting high standards for achievement, character, and creating a climate to best serve students, the staff, and the school community. Ms. King will receive a $6,000 award, and Forest Park Middle School will receive a $6,000 grant. We also have a student from our district who has received the Herb Cole Student Excellence Scholarship. Suha Malik has been selected for this award for exceptional scholarship, leadership, citizenship, and school and community involvement. Suha will receive a $10,000 scholarship to use for her college tuition. My last piece of good news is that we've had great success in getting our staff vaccinated. Our partnership with Ascension has allowed us to vaccinate over 350 employees. Ascension continues to provide our employees dates and times to be vaccinated. In closing, I'd like to share that our COVID cases remain relatively low, but have ticked up slightly, with 7 cases causing 156 students to be currently quarantined. I'd like to remind our families and community that even though there are a number of people who've been vaccinated, our students are not among them. And we need to continue to be diligent regarding social gathering, sanitizing, and wearing masks. COVID is still very much among us, and as a school district, we will continue to follow our mitigation protocols, including quarantining students who are close contacts. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Item 8, reports, presentations, and other school board business. Our first item is Principal Action Plan Update for Franklin High School. Mr. Vella and company.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
It's always nice to have a good
return good evening, as Mr. Karalevich will say in a moment. So we're going to start out, and Mr. Karalevich will welcome us back based on where we were when we were last with you in November, and then we'll talk about where we've been since. So, Brian, take it away.
All right, guys. Can you hear me okay? All right, super. So thanks, first of all, for having us this evening and welcoming us here. You may remember at our last board meeting, we asked you to reflect upon and document your why, and also develop actions that would move you and our organization forward. We asked you to share with us, and then we mailed this back to you. So we'd like to open today by having you reflect upon this activity, and using the prompt below as a guide, share with one of your colleagues right next door how your actions have demonstrated your purpose. So consider this question. How has your why guided your purpose for the past 2 months, and what did you learn? So we'll put you on the clock for 60 seconds. So you remember, we had a little post-it or like a note card that we had given back to you. So that's what we're referring to. So you just share your experiences with a colleague in 3, 2, and 1. 30 seconds. Chance to speak. 10 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So just wanted to share with you what could be an example of a welcoming activity, in that the competency we're pushing on there is relationship building, you and a colleague sharing some actions that are important to you. And tonight we want to share some stories of things that are happening at Franklin High School, stories about our purpose and the impact of our actions over the past few months. And with that, I'll hand it off to Principal Mike Volo.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks everybody for your reflection to start and reground yourself in your purpose. So as a reminder in terms of what we're doing and why we're doing it, this school year we want to have all our improvement tied to our coherence goals. And ultimately, and it's in the report that I shared with you, right, we believe that if our teachers integrate those social and emotional practices into their really strong teaching practices, high leverage strategies are research based, right? We believe if they collaborate in professional learning communities to talk about what our students are learning and how we ensure all students learn, and we improve our practice in the classroom, right, then all students can achieve and will, right? And that's the through line. It's that simple clarity of consistency. So when we talk about our key actions to date, it's not that we're going to talk about something new from the past 3 months. We're going to talk about clear, consistent learning, application, reflection, and refinement. And that's what we're excited to share with you today. Of most things, everything we do as adults in our school has tangible things we can look for in terms of success criteria in our classrooms. We can hear and see adults taking certain actions, and we can hear certain things from our students and what they're doing daily in our classrooms. And that's really exciting to us because it lets us know the impact of the actions we're taking and the learning we're engaging in. And with that, Mr. Jonas will talk through some student engagement data and highlight a few things that were in the report. Mr. Karalevich will talk about some data actions that related to our students' achievement. And okay, we'll keep going from there. So Joey, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody. So one of the ways that we determine our next steps is based on what our students tell us, probably the most important voices that we get the chance to listen to. We need to listen to their voices in a few different ways. We engage them through student engagement surveys, and I'm going to highlight some of the data points from our last 2 pulse surveys. A pulse survey is a survey in which we choose a smaller subset of questions from the full engagement survey and then use their answers, like I said, to engage our school improvement teams and our teachers in our next steps. Over the last 2 pulse surveys, the top 3 areas in which our students responded were: in my school, adults believe I can learn; I believe I can learn, so the student internalizing that and saying they can learn; and I feel welcome in my classrooms and in my school. In the bottom 3, in the areas that we focus on for continued growth, I try my best even when the work seems hard. Adults at my school respect all students, and students in my school care about each other's feelings. So we engage our focus groups as a next step with those areas in mind. So when we talk to our students, we ask them questions that are related to those areas in ways that we can improve. And we're gonna highlight the process in which we engaged our school improvement team on that data as kind of the wrap up to our report this evening. So that was our work there with the student engagement survey and our students. And Brian's gonna highlight some of the other evidence that we've received from our standardized test scores.
Yeah, so we have a couple times a year, once in the fall, once in the winter, and then there's a summative assessment in the spring that 9th and 10th graders take that's aligned to ACT college readiness standards. So I just want to draw your attention to some of the visuals in our report. We have some graphs that show how we did per subject area from the fall administration to the winter administration. And just want to highlight that we achieved growth in all 4 subject areas. When we look at our 9th and 10th graders collectively, we had a percentage of growth from fall to winter in English, just under 8% in reading, 6% in math, and 8% in science. And another piece that we look at is students that are ready in all 4 areas, and we had a 5% growth in readiness in all 4 subjects from the fall administration to the winter administration. And it's our goal to continue to provide high quality instruction in the classroom. And we really do believe that the things we do in the classroom are going to continue to prepare students for achievement and attainment on college readiness measures.
And as you'll see in the engagement data as well as the achievement data, right, the ACT Aspire, the engagement data suggests that our students know that we believe in them and that they can learn, which is vital to a learning relationship. They believe in themselves, right? And we still have work to do to help our students see that they together, right, care about each other, that they can be empathetic, they can be collaborative, and they all are in school together. So that's something we'll continue to work to refine and get better at. And we look at our achievement data, remember that ACT readiness simply means you're more likely than not to get a passing, like a B or better, in an intro 100 level college course. And as our graduating cohorts have shown you over the years, at best, we're typically between 30 and 40% of our graduating seniors are ready in all 4 areas, right? And as parents of this panel, former parents of this panel, in terms of Franklin High School graduates, that's not good enough, right? We can't say that 40% of our seniors are likely to get a B or better in a 100 level college course. So when we talk about that need for all students to get there, and we talk about ready in all 4 areas on that one measure, and again, it's only one measure, right? It's still not good enough we say that only a third or 40% or even 50% of our students are likely to be successful in college. So again, it's nice to see some positive growth, in a cohort or 2, but again, we want to see that improve overall. In terms of the last part of our report talks about being a better place to work and some of the clear actions that we've taken there. And to be fair, again, we're trying to be consistent and clear with our staff in terms of what it is we're asking them to do, what it is we're asking them to apply in their classrooms, as well as how we give them feedback on the actions we're expecting them to take. So when we talk through those different pieces, we engage in rounding meetings, which I know you saw modeled last month. We're in the heart of rounding again with all our employees, not just teachers, but everyone who works in our building. And we're continuing to refine, again, how we do that to get better at giving staff the answers to the questions they have, give them access to the resources they need, and also recognize the good work that they see from their colleagues in our building. So it really is a powerful practice that we, are glad to be doing this year to the fidelity that we are. And again, we communicate what we expect to see, and we define and link that with observable behaviors in our practice. So we know we want to see and hear from our different employee groups when it comes to doing their work every day that allows students to learn. And what we want to share with you today in terms of a learning focus is to talk about how our students are involved in improvement work. And to that end, Mr. Jonas talked about student focus groups. So we take a survey, and the survey gives us data. We then work with our students to further understand that data. We record statements from them, and we then have the opportunity to also have them give us feedback on some strategic actions that we're taking. So student focus groups can really help us know the fidelity to which we're taking the actions and commitments that we've said we will do. And furthermore, they help us understand what is behind those survey responses. This past fall, we engaged, well, I'm not sure if it was fall or winter, but in December, we conducted, I believe, 7 student focus groups. We had 8 planned. It involved students in grades 9 and 10 in groups of 8, and students in 11 and 12 grouped together. The focus groups were conducted by members of the school improvement team, typically with an admin, but also sometimes just members of the school improvement team, leading and conducting those focus groups. We had focus groups of in-person learners, and we had focus groups with virtual learners. So for us, that power and that idea is then we're able to actually hear their thoughts about the questions that we performed really well on and that we didn't perform as well on. So we've prepared for you today is we've taken some of the actual recordings from our student focus groups in December, and we've provided the evidence here along with one of our prompts. So this first one that I'm going to have you look at is in response to that really high question of adults believe, right, I can learn. So what is it, we would ask our students, what is it that adults in our building do to help you believe that you can learn? And I'm going to give you about a minute to look at this with the following question in mind. The question's at the bottom. All right, so looking at those statements that students made, the statements are bulleted, right? The question I want you to reflect on individually at first is what do you notice, okay, what do you wonder as a result of these student responses? So again, take about a minute, just think individually, write down some thoughts if you have them. Well, I know you wish you all had more time. We always do. I would ask you to, brevity's sake, just pause where you are. And if you didn't have a chance to look at all of them, that's okay. What I want you to do with the proximal partner, so again, elbow partner or triad, is share what you noticed with your neighbor in terms of these particular responses. Again, this was students telling us what comes to mind when, you know, they answer the question, in my school, adults believe I can learn. And what are examples of things that we do and say that make you feel this way? So share with your neighbors what you noticed. All right, we're going to come back to big group, and then I'm going to have different partnerships. Give me one noticing, and we'll start with Dr. Reuter and Miss Cody. Start with you all. What's a notice that you had? Just one.
Oh, just one.
Just one.
Feedback was important.
Feedback. All right. Thank you. Going over, Mike and Ann? What's something you notice?
Please
You know-
always speak before you.
The active relationship versus a passive relationship, the student or the teachers actively engaging with the students.
Awesome. Thank you. Ms. Larson, your group, what's something that you had?
The sense of the personal touch sat with me, helped me, stayed after.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Witkowski?
Most of those were stated already that we had,
All
but
right.
also I would add extra resources or giving them tools. Talking about
And-
study plan.
Thank you. Ms. Ellihausen, Dr. Cohn, Mr. Misler?
Here.
All right, thank you. What you engage in is some of the thematic analysis that our school improvement teams do with the student focus group data that we get. So we take 7 focus groups from December and we do something similar to what you just did. For example, the themes that we talked about were things like feedback about progress, the language we use as teachers, providing resources, individual connections, providing encouragement. Right? And from those, from every question we have, and we go through questions on our lowest area, such as, when you hear the question, students in my school care about each other's feelings, right? And then we go through again, what would a school look like if students did care about each other's feelings? So we go through more questions than just the one that we shared with you. But we come up with themes and we come up with statements, theme statements, which are in our board report that we shared. So for example, a theme we identified through focus groups was, we must pay close attention to the language we use and provide individual students with encouragement and feedback around their progress. And that wordsmithing happened in a school improvement team meeting. Right? We sat down with those buckets and those themes, and we came and left with those statements. As a result of those statements, we then took learning actions. We conducted an identity exercises on our professional development day to reflect as educators in terms of what we bring to our classrooms and how our experience shapes what we do with our students. We continue to refine and integrate our welcoming and closing activities with what we know works in terms of not just social and emotional learning, but teaching and learning in an evidence and research-based way. And we reminded ourselves of commitments every day to have every student be greeted by name when they walk into our building, so they do feel welcome and belonging in all of our classrooms. And that's a small glimpse into how we involve students in school improvement work. Every building in our district is doing similar things, but something we're really proud of at the high school level because, again, it helps validate the action we're taking. It gives us additional data and measurement of our impact, and it helps us refine and get better at what we're doing. We'll be engaging in focus groups with our students this spring in the next month or so. And again, we'll then bring that back to our school improvement team and continue to get better at the things we need to get better at to improve our student experience. And with that, we normally would run through a closure, but I want to leave some time for any questions that you have before we talk about closure. So any questions of the high school team?
Just one question.
Okay.
So what kind of participation do you get in the surveys? What % of the students actually
I
participate?
think we've had between 800 and some has been the lowest in administration. And I think we've gone upwards of 1,250. So between those two things, we typically have the students do the survey. It's open for about a week window, and they do it during a block. And then we try to catch the kids who are absent, by directly targeting them as best we can. But again, about 1,250, I believe, has been our high participation on the engagement survey.
And then you did mention that you had virtual versus in-person, so you do track kind of the variances that might happen, or is it all grouped together? 'Cause-
We haven't broken down like the engagement data in this sense with the graphs that you saw. We haven't broken that down by virtual and in person, but largely, again, from our student focus groups as well as the in-person versus virtual, the feedback they provide in terms of like what works and what makes them feel these ways tends to be pretty similar. So the focus group data, I can tell you, is very common in spite of the different mode. So when the kids come through the screen, we're meeting virtually with the virtual students for their focus group. The feedback they share is relatively similar. If we took the, who are these learners and are they virtual off the focus group statements that they bring back to us, it looks fairly identical, especially with them saying they want to be connected to their peers, other things like that, that I think is really important for all of us, not just our virtual learners, but in person as well.
Thank you.
What does the data look like for virtual learners in terms of the ACT?
The Aspire?
Aspire.
So we haven't broken that down yet, Mike. So the Aspire data, and I know that in terms of like what it shows, I don't want to draw too much conclusion around, like, for example, a new course or other things like that. But the Aspire data that you're looking at in here, the winter data, we had that about 2 weeks ago is when we first got it, and we haven't disaggregated it to say, here's the virtual versus the in-person. But again, if I had to conject, it's probably pretty similar, where we have students who are, at target and students who aren't. I don't see it being too, different than the in-person learners, because again, it's a cross-section of our school are in the virtual program. So it might be somewhat less representative in some ways, but at the same time, we have students of every, sort within our virtual program and our in-person learning. And I think that the achievement is pretty similar. I don't know if there's anything different I'd say yet, Nick.
Yeah, no, I just added in the fall, there wasn't much difference, so the numbers were pretty similar. So unlike the elementary level where we saw some differences, the middle and high school were pretty similar in their overall between virtual and in-person.
Just one other question I have. When I look at the data, reading, English, where 75% are, I'm assuming that percent means that they would do okay in a college level course. Is that what that represents?
Yep.
Reading, it's 55, math, it's 52, science, 63. So why would we be at 36 if all four areas? Is
The
that-
ready in all four.
So it's so people are just have better command of one subject area over the other. That's what contributes to this? Okay.
And
That makes
let-
me
Let me just add into that, the national average is 26% ready in all four areas. So just for a basis of comparison, that's the national number.
I guess I feel better knowing that, we're not all great English people. We have different areas of talent, so
Yep.
that makes me feel a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay. No one else? Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is our early college credit and Start College Now request approvals. Mr. Vollett.
Yeah, I'll stick around.
Thank you.
I believe that you had seen the memo, and in the memo, you'll see, I believe, 128 requests, representing about 109 unique courses from 9 different universities and colleges. What you look at when you look at these requests, remember, in spring, for example, this current semester, we have 32 active enrollments with our students, and you approved about 90 requests in fall for this semester. Similarly, fall, of last fall, we had 24 students actually engage in coursework. So while the number is high again, between a third or a quarter of the students typically enroll in the course. Students are advised to select alternative courses, right, in case they can't get in the first one for whatever reason, or it doesn't fit in their schedule. You'll also notice at the front part of this, there are summer requests. The summer requests can only be the early college credit program because Start College Now is not active in the summer. And for all these requests, remember, we will pay up to 18 credits, right? And that's per our policy, which is the threshold that the state says we can set is 18 credits. And beyond that, it's up to students if they want to take these classes. And also, there is reimbursement from the state for these programs in different ways and levels. But when we look at these things, the students are expected to successfully complete these courses. And if they are not, we will ask the students and families to reimburse us if they're unsuccessful in their pursuits. So with all that being said, I'm happy to share this with you and answer any questions you might have and ask humbly for you to approve these requests. The ones that we can deny, I did note in the report, and I believe it was only one course in this particular batch. We had a comparable course we actually offer the same course through a transcripted course in Family Consumer Ed, and that was on application 29 from MATC regarding Foundations of Early Childhood Education. We actually do offer that exact course in our high school, taught by Ms. Kraus, one of our highly qualified educators. So any questions?
Is this more, it does seem like it's more, ask, again, we don't know how many people actually take the classes, but.
I'd say, yeah, it is more than it was in spring or fall of this current year, and it's more than we had last year. So when we go back, the number of overall requests is up. I can tell you that this is the largest summer request I had, and by that, of course, it's 5 applications, So with that, it could be more than five, or excuse me, it could be less than 5 students, but they might apply at more than one place. So if a student submitted an application to Madison and Milwaukee, they're on here twice because each application is separate. But at the same time, this is the most summer requests I've had, when I've been coming to you with this report. I'm not suggesting that's a record, but again, you're not wrong in that it seems like there are more than there were prior. And again, I can tell you that we had, I believe, 90 approvals for this current spring semester and around that same number for fall. So this is again 128, I believe.
Thank you.
Student number 27, there's a request for a nursing assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have a CNA program
So-
operating?
yep.
So,
So nursing assistant though is a program that we send students to MATC to take, right? So it's not the same course. It's not our course. So we don't offer a comparable course. We pay for kids to go to a program. So in this student's case, they're asking to take certain things that maybe would typically be in another enrollment option, and we can't say no because we send 10 kids to a CNA program, and we do have limits to what we can do. Or similarly, a student might miss or not want to apply to a dual enrollment academy, and they might request all the courses from that dual enrollment academy. So they might not be able to get into all those programs, right? And there's space and other things that make it hard to get into those, but there's not a reason we could say no to the request simply based on the fact that we have another pathway. The options for us to turn it down are, again, a course that we teach in our high school that every student can access. And in this case, a CNA would not be available for every student per se in the same way as like English 101 or psychology or some of those other courses. And I'd add, it might be difficult for the student to enroll in that course, to be fair, because there are capacity limits at MATC, and they're competitive then with everyone, not just high school students. So those cohorts have strict limits by state numbers and hours and everything else. So it's not that easy to get into those programs.
Any other questions? Then I would be looking for a motion to approve early college credit, start college now request as submitted by Mr. Vallo.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Larson,
second.
second by Ms. Saprowski. Any discussion?
Just wondering if we have to do something different for the denial, or do we just?
Do we have to do anything different?
The one that we deny,
Yeah.
their application will come back with that flag saying, no, we don't approve for this purpose. And then that's indicative of our action. So that denial will be checked on their application form of that one. So again, the memo that you're approving has the recommendation on it in terms of approve or deny. So my understanding in our
We're
practice
approving
has
the
been.
memo.
You're approving
You're
the ones that
approving
he's recommending for approval.
Okay,
So the
great,
denial's
thank you.
just not on the list.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next is our summer school course approvals. Dr. Rotter.
Good evening, everyone. I come to you tonight planning for our summer session while we're still in our 2021 academic session, and we're already planning for next fall. So we've got 3 school years running right now. Pursuant to Wisconsin Administrative Code Section PI 17, I'm asking for approval of our summer school programming K through 12, or 1 through 12. And as you'll see in the document I shared with you, I outlined what our model will look like this summer. A fully in-person model, which is different than what we provided last year where we ran a virtual model. At the elementary level, you can see that we're going to run a cohort model where families would sign their child up for a cohort of classes. That way we can ensure safety and mitigation and be able to quarantine if need be a smaller number of students than a mass school. As well as you can see at the middle and high school level, we're offering unique enrichment courses that we have not done in the past, and that's all contingent upon staffing and enrollment to run those. As well as at the high school level, I would point out we're excited to offer an ACT prep online course this summer, as well as an AP Summer Academy. And I'm working with Mr. Volo right now to implement next year an after-school ACT prep program throughout the course of the year, as our juniors yesterday just took the ACT assessment. We know how important that is based on the information we heard this evening from our high school administrative team. As well as we're looking to offer 5 first-time credit options, from American Government to a couple math classes, physical education, health, and Spanish 1. Knowing the effects of our programming model this year and our limitations of some of the offerings at the middle and high school level, we want to offer some first-time credit options for students that may have taken virtual and did not have the same opportunities, specifically Spanish 1. If you're a 7th or 8th grader, or 8th grader and you were unable to take Spanish because of the virtual option, this will give you a head start to take that course before the start of the school year in the summer session, which would then lead to, you could be in Spanish 2 as a sophomore, and you would fall into our normal course progression. And again, these are all options. We have our credit recovery as well at the high school level, and you can see the courses in the core areas that are outlined there based on our analysis of students that are in need of that credit recovery. So I'm looking for approval this evening to publish these courses. Ms. Ellihausen and I have already started the process of recruiting and understanding what our current internal staff would be interested in teaching this summer. Then from there, we can determine next steps for staffing and then open that catalog, as you see on page 1 of the registration timeline, and the opportunities for our kids in Franklin to either enrich, gather first-time credit, or recover credit and have an optimal experience this summer. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
What do we expect the summer school to look like in terms of numbers versus what it's looked like, not last summer, but in previous years?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. You know, there's still unknowns as to the summer and what's going to be open and how we're going to flow. We can anticipate that we are hopeful at the elementary level that we'll see a similar, obviously in the cohort model, we have a limitation on class size and number of kids that can participate, but prior to last year, our 3-year trend is around 540, 550 kids at the elementary level. If we could max out all of these sections and run all of these cohorts with an average class size, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Ellihausen, between 15 and 20, we're looking at 450 kids at the elementary level. And as you can see in the report too, middle and high, we have large buildings and we have expansive space in those buildings, so it's really about who wants to take what, and we'll try to offer as much as we can based on staffing.
And if I can add, we intend to run kids camp again for our students, so that's a really big draw for our families to pair summer school with kids camp. So doing both, I think, will bring up our summer school.
I've been working with Mr. Anderson, and they're going to run a similar cohort model for kids camp as well in order to ensure safety precautions.
Any other questions?
Ask real quick here. With your transition courses, I see you're offering one for the high school. I don't think that's been offered before. And the transition to middle school, it's listed as like 6th grade for the transition to middle school. Will you have any option for like a 7th grader who was virtual this year as a 6th grader to be able to come to that transition course?
That's a great question. Ms. Pine, one of our math science teachers, is going to coordinate that work, and Ms. Sundstrom from my office and I have been working with her and Mrs. King, and so that's an idea we can bring to the table, thinking about those unique, as 6th grade was one of the highest grade levels of virtual instruction this year, and understandably a transition from your elementary school to a middle school and then the pandemic on top of that. That's a great idea.
Well, and then also the high school, you know, if you have someone who's a freshman this year, would they be able to do that transition course next year?
Yeah.
I'll ask a second question.
Go for it.
Your Phi-Ed, it says only for kids who are enrolled in the Inroads program?
Yes.
Can you tell me more about that?
And actually, I appreciate you pointing that out. That's a typo. We are going to open that to any student that would like to take physical education. Historically, it's only run for Inroads students because of constraints on their freshman schedule due to programming they have to take. But we would like to open physical education for credit for all students based on it opens up opportunities later on in their academic career, because it is a 1.5 credit requirement per the state. And so that allows for students, just like health, for students to eliminate that credit in the summer months, and then when we think about opportunities for internships and offsite experiences, and some of the pieces that Mr. Volo spoke to tonight, that just gives that flexibility.
I just.
As
wanted
well
to
as those other first-time credit pieces, government, things like that, personal finance, which the board approved about 4 years ago as a graduation requirement. It's good to tick some of those off.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that was.
Yes, and I'm sorry,
Equitable
that was a
between
copy and paste error.
Inroads and other students, so.
Yes.
Cool, thank you.
Just one other question. I guess when I look at the offerings, it looks like the elementary level is really more enrichment. There's no efforts to catch up or, address gaps, if there are gaps. Did you think about, it appears that there are definitely many opportunities to catch up in high school. But
Yeah,
I'm
if you
wondering-
call back to 2 years ago, I did my end-of-year summer school report, which I'll do again this year. We did a 3-year trend analysis of map data to determine and looked at kids who had been in remediation, and there was less than a 2% growth for those students. So we were pouring many resources into remediation work without getting any results. So we had shifted, and my last year's report was to the belief that at the elementary level and middle school, and now at high school, we'd offer summer learning as enrichment. It doesn't mean that kids aren't still reading. As you read some of these titles, they're not engaging in inquiry, science, math, and physical activity. So we would rather pool our resources to open up to more experiences and make that a positive experience for summer enrichment and learning versus you are struggling in reader and you're going to come back now for the next 6 weeks, and we're going to continue to work with you as my department, Mrs. Cody's department, think about how we're intervening through the school year using evidence-based practices in order to close those gaps around our equity work.
Okay. I guess it sounds like you're referring to your review of past summer schools. I'm talking about this unique year where you might, we've seen some of the data at the grade schools that appears to be some loss of learning, and so you're basing that though on what before COVID
Sure.
summer experiences. So I guess it applies. But the only reason I ask is that I have been on a couple of webinars and hearing plans for summer school and efforts to address that gap that appears to be in some districts. So that's why I'm asking.
Thank you. And I would still go back to there's minimal research that supports that summer school closes achievement gaps. So we're rebranding it as a enrichment, getting kids involved in their interests and their excitement for school when we think about engagement and what the high school shared tonight.
Any other questions? Okay, I would be looking for a motion to approve the 2021 Franklin Public Schools Summer Learning Program courses.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis,
Second.
second by Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next is our FEA wage agreement approvals for 2021 and 2021-22. Ms. Ellihausen.
Good evening. Mr. Milzer and I will certainly answer any questions you have, but what you see before you in the next 3 agenda items address the wage increases for the work groups, all work groups in the district. And indeed with the FEA, we met twice with members, teachers from the association. We had really good dialogue around where we're at, where we're heading, and we reached agreement in those 2 meetings with them. It was a very productive conversation. So the motion that you see is to approve that 2% wage increase in each year, 2021, the year we're in, and then 21-22 next school year, a 2% wage increase in each of those years.
Any questions from the board members?
Well, this is it's a supplement comes through as a supplement for them, not a base wage increase, correct?
It is not in base wages per statutory requirements around bargaining. It certainly is in their annual salary. It does increase their annual salary, their annual contract salary. There's terms can be simultaneously used in most cases, Mrs. Witkowski, but for purposes of the statutory definitions, they're very different.
I noticed that it's very clear in the recommended action also. You're very clear that it's here and not there. And understand it relates to our ability to, who's getting it, I guess, ultimately is the difference.
How it's costed is the difference, or how it's calculated through the process of bargaining per the statute.
Okay, thank you.
It'd
Any other
take me like a half hour to do that lesson for us.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the FEA wage agreement for 2020-21, 2021-22.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sapersky,
Second.
second by Ms. Larson. Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, Ms. Larson?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Sprague,
Aye.
Mrs. Sapersky,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Mr. Gamble,
Aye.
motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. For the FSOEA, is that the same
Yes.
numbers and everything?
Well, this would be our support staff.
Yes.
Our educational assistants, office assistants, represented group, same pool of dollars over the same 2-year period of time.
Any questions from board members? Then I'll be looking for a motion to approve the FSOEA wage agreement for 2020-21, 2021-22.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Larson,
Second.
second by Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? Ms. Larson, can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Sprague,
Aye.
Mrs. Sapersky,
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Gamble
Aye.
and Mrs. Witkowski.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
And the third item, non-represented wage increase for the same year groups.
Yes, so this grouping would include our custodial staff, our food service staff, our professional technology staff, administrative staff.
So I'll be looking for a motion to approve the non-represented wage increase for 2020-21, 2021-22. Motion by Mr. Lewis,
Second.
second by Ms. Witkowski. Any discussion? Ms. Larson, we have another roll call vote.
Yes. Mr. Sprague,
Aye.
Mrs. Sapersky,
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Gamble,
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank the board. I think it's really important that the wages were taken care of for this year and for next year. That is a significant thing to do on behalf of our staff. Thank you very much.
Item 9 is our school board liaison reports. Up first, we have our personnel and policy. Ms. Larson.
Thank you. Before you is policy number 8100, Board of Education Code of Conduct. This is an action item. We are one of the few boards in our area that does have a policy as this is, as such. Many bigger districts have this policy, such as MPS and Kenosha, so this is not a required policy. I appreciate all of the input that we had from board members after looking over this policy. So I would ask for a motion to approve this policy as it is.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Witkowski,
Second.
second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion?
Yeah, I wonder if, and maybe not in the policy, probably not in the policy, but maybe in the handbook if we want to add something or look at something about social media and rules, not rules around that. A code of conduct around social media. And I don't know if that's discussion for now or for a different time.
I think it's a good idea, especially if you're suggesting we maybe put it in a board handbook. I think that's a great idea. I'm just wondering, would we have to have an ad hoc committee for something like that? Or how would we go about doing that?
Potentially, the board could take a look at their handbook. There was an ad hoc committee that put the handbook together. You might want to revisit it and see if it has all the components you want, and then have a discussion about what could be added. I'd certainly want to consult with legal counsel on any kind of guidelines around this that would go into a handbook, but it could be done.
How does the board feel about that?
I think it's reasonable to expect that there would be some code of conduct around social media in this day and age.
A general statement at least, but I don't know that it's the board's responsibility to get into specifics, what can and can't be said or anything like that. But maybe, and that's basically what this does, it's general conduct. I don't know that you would need something in addition to this personally.
Okay. I mean, that's great input.
Again, Judy's discussion or suggestion about legal counsel would be very important there because, like I say, general statement that we all have to live by is great, but when you start getting into specifics, what you can and can't do, that's touchy.
And a handbook's probably a better place for it.
I would agree.
And would maybe give some general guidance, if you're not involved with social media and you get involved, might want to know what you're getting into, I guess.
In the handbook.
In the handbook, I think it's more, this, like you said, is very high level, and social media, to me, is where you might express some of these things. It's not, it's a detail, as opposed to this is very general and appropriate, I think.
Well, I'd be willing to do some more research, perhaps reach out to WASB and see what they might offer in terms of a recommendation for anything that might go in a handbook. I mean, it's the school board organization for the state. I might just reach out and say, have you seen this in handbooks? Do you have any samples? And then I could bring that back to the board.
That'd be good. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve or recertify, I forget what you said.
To approve
To approve
as presented.
as presented, policy 8100. And motion by Ms. Witkowski, second by Ms. Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any school board liaison reports?
I do have
Oh,
one.
good.
I did participate in a webinar on leading for equity in education. That was, I think, Monday. I think we all had an opportunity to participate. It was, and I think it was an hour long. I would say it was interesting in that we started with our attitude about equity, because if you can have facts about equity, but attitudes seem to override knowledge, and you can't really change attitudes with facts. You have to do it with experiences. That was quite interesting concept. And it kind of made you think that, because, leaders have to make the changes. If it's systematic, you have to think of yourself as a leader in order to make this, to move the needle on this topic. So that's all I would say on that one. I don't know, Judy said you were in on it too?
Yep, I participated as well. The guest was Dr. Marquita Newell, and I thought that she did a really good job of talking about equity in the same ways we're thinking about equity in our district, as it's a systemic issue that you have to approach in that way, and that access is important. And learning is important. Learning in the sense of what's the history of this.
And another concept was that we tend to kind of think that something's wrong with the kid as opposed to
The system.
the system. And I think we did have that concept, some of our earlier workshops, we talked about that. So that was one session I did attend, and then we also had the SWSA meeting this morning. Was it this morning? No. I don't know. Tuesday. I did share the slide deck with everybody. It did include Children's Hospital staff in the beginning, and I think we're moving in the right direction there in terms of vaccinations and moving up to increase herd immunity. And then also we had a legislative update. There's a state budget going on, you may have noticed. And I think the big issue at this point is how the federal dollars are going to be shared with districts. As you know, the proposal had been to do it based on the time in school, which does not appear to be very popular. Although I have to say that we had 3 legislators also came on, and there was a sharing of information, and did explain the why of that. I had no idea why you would think that, but it had to do with the way the Title I dollars, is Title I federal dollars, are, that formula ended up giving exponentially more money to those districts that did not have in-person learning. And he recognized that in-person learning had a higher cost, so that was why they are not happy with that distribution, so they want to impact that. But the discussion there was, I guess, they want to be our partners, so it is interesting that those legislators do talk to superintendents in their district. I don't know if you have a relationship with our.
Well, as a matter of fact, there was a meeting today.
Okay.
Let's get to that next.
I'd like to report on.
Okay, well then, we'll talk about that then. And then also there was the second half of another webinar called, presented by the Hanover Research Arm, which is connected to SWSA. And there, the topic was on strategic planning in the new normal. And they had different presenters, again, related to how you can advance the equity topic given the situation that we are in. It's an opportunity that you don't get because of the circumstances. And let's see, and actually there was, one district was from Green Bay. This person presented his ideas on what he's going to be pushing going forward. And one idea was this weighted resource model, where you assign teachers based on need, not just students. It was an interesting concept. And also the idea that you can reconsider some of your options. You know, you might think that these variables that things are fixed, like the school calendar is fixed, so we can't ever change it, when really maybe you can change it. And we just saw the legislatures thinking about changing the start date to give more instructional time. So it's time to rethink some of these things that we thought would never change, and they could change. So it's a unique opportunity that we're in. And let's see. So it was interesting information, and I wish I could summarize it better, but short time. I did attend, and moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I had a meeting with Drs. Cohn and Reuter to talk instruction and assessment.
The instruction piece was about summer school, which we've already talked about. But assessment, looking at the upcoming forward exam and how we're gonna make that available for all students, virtual and in person. Because that can't be administered virtually. Everyone needs to come here or, come to the building somehow. And then the ACT, which our juniors took yesterday, and just ongoing math test scores and things. And then also looking at our coherence plan and talking about the focus groups that are gonna be coming up in the month of April to help us kind of refocus, redevelop that, or update the coherence plan. So that was our meeting.
Thank you.
I also met with Mike Volo at the high school. We talked about his report today in a little bit more depth than he went into today. Spent a lot of time on the focus groups, actually. I kind of suggested he go in that more detail, because it was very interesting listening to what the students had to say. And we also talked about the ACT testing, and it was basically it.
Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Thank you, everybody, for those reports. Item C, our school and community engagement reports.
Excuse me, Mr. Gamble, would you like to take a moment just to review the liaison report format one last time, if I could?
Yes.
Seems to fit well under that agenda item of liaison reports. So I have for you a redraft or a draft that you've seen before, for the most part, of some of the feedback I received from you regarding your role as a liaison, and you'll see the addition of the language to introduce the agenda item for the department's report at the board meeting. And that came from the feedback you provided regarding having the liaisons be able to talk further about those meetings with their departments. And it just like this evening is a little awkward for Ms. Sapersky because Dr. Reuter had already spoken about the summer school report, so then she really doesn't have anything to share when it comes time to say I met with Dr. Reuter. I do want to clarify, though, it's not for every single agenda item. It would just be for those reports, those larger reports that departments bring forward that you would introduce, and you would give kind of a summary of your learning around it, and prior to the director or department head sharing what's in that report. So it's a stronger engagement between you and that department head in terms of presenting that report. But again, I'll repeat, it isn't for every action item or everything that comes to the board, because then you'd have to engage all the time with those department leaders and directors. So that was a suggestion to build on that engagement. And then I just created a draft of where you could take notes. And a piece of feedback from Ms. Sapersky was just to kind of flip those questions, which I did. I thought that made a lot of sense. The last two questions on that document, you can fill them out and report on them any way you'd like. It just gives us a little more structure to the process, which is what I heard you talk about at the previous meeting. So that, I think, would be a good format to move forward with, but before we do, I just wanted to make sure there was clarity around it, and then I was open to any other feedback you wanted to provide on this process.
This looks very good.
Questions or concerns or?
Is there a list or cycle?
Perfect question. Yes, we need to provide you a list of reports, and I will do that. Thank you very much for that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I forgot all about this.
The meeting with the senator.
Yes, that's what I was going to get to next. With our community and school engagement reports. Today we had a chance to meet with Senator Bradley and Luke from his office, Dr. Miller, Dr. Cohn, Mr. Milzer, Mr. Sprague, and myself. We had a good meeting with them, had a chance to talk about our story here in Franklin, good things we're working on, what we're doing, give them some background, since Senator Bradley is our new senator after Senator Craig retired. One of the other focus on the meeting was reviving what was last year's AB 908, which was to help with leveling the playing field for our DPI report card. And with the way COVID impacted the legislative process last year, we got the bill introduced, almost had it, we had all the support lined up for it, but then when the pandemic hit, it stalled and obviously didn't go anywhere with the way the legislative cycle ended. We had been in talk with Senator Bradley's office and Representative Skoronsky's office about being able to bring this proposal back, and our meeting today was very nice. They informed us that, or Senator Bradley informed us that both the Senate version and the Assembly version were submitted this week. So that's back in play for us, and that will be helpful for future DPI report cards and giving anybody who's looking to move to Franklin a clearer picture of what we provide as a high-performing quality education for our students and the families. Did you want to cover the last part of that? The budget part?
So we spoke with the senator regarding all the things we're really proud of in Franklin. And we talked about the bill, and then we talked about the budget. And we conveyed the importance of the support we need from the state to continue with our high-quality programs in Franklin. One area that we're working to advocate for is funding for special education. It has been underfunded for a very long time. The legislators did put more money into that the last biennium, but it's not nearly where it should be. And Senator Bradley's response is very positive to that, and he said that he had heard many, many school districts conveying that need as well. So, Mr. Milzer, if you have anything else to add, that was really your part of the discussion today.
We talked about two other things: mental health services for students, as well as having a long-term plan for funding schools and giving schools enough of an increase so that they can plan on that year after year and be able to count on that. So, and he thought that was a good idea too.
Thank you. Appreciate the input on that part. Did you have anything to add, Mike?
I don't, I just thought it was a positive meeting, and he seems like an optimistic guy, and I was impressed by him.
Very good. Okay. Anything else under
I did want to say that
school and community engagements?
I did enjoy watching the basketball games, the girls and
Yes.
and the boys. They didn't advance, but it was interesting to be able to see it. So, it was good.
I thought it was really fun that they let the high school kids do the announcing too, on the radio announcing or whatever. I thought it was a really great way to get more kids involved and give them that experience.
They are so good at it.
So good.
Yeah.
So
The
good.
live streaming, they did a very good job.
Really good.
Any other comments? Okay. Item 10, school board debriefing. Any school board member have comments for tonight's meeting? Hearing none. Item 11, future agenda items. Board self-evaluation discussion. The 2021-22 preliminary budget assumptions. Budget document revisions review. The Friends of Franklin recognition, principal action plan update for Forest Park Middle School, and the 2021-22 school year learning program. And item 12, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Larson, second by Ms. Witkowski. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. We are adjourned at 7:09.